Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us again for our weekly fireside chat here at ARC, the Anti-Recidivism Coalition. Today, our topic will be truth, racial healing, and transformation. Why is House Congressional Resolution 100 long overdue? As always, we have some amazing guests, some amazing human beings that will be here to walk us through this. When we talk about this commission that we like to form, this resolution, which was introduced by Congressional Representative Barbara Lee, we will be joined by these amazing leaders so that we have a better understanding of exactly what this resolution is. We have Sabra Williams, who is the Executive Director of Creative Arts. We have Dr. Marcus Hunter, author and professor at UCLA's Department of Sociology and African American Studies, and our very own Michael Mendoza, ARC's Director of National Advocacy. Sabra, would you please introduce yourself? How are you doing today? And what is your work in creative arts happening right now? Share with us, please.
Creative acts, Sam. Everyone says acts. Hi, I'm super grateful to be here with my brothers from ARC and one of my favorite group of people, and with Marcus, who's my new partner in this work. Well, actually, Creative Acts was co-founded by one of your own, by myself and Mama Cheryl Bonacci in 2018. And what we do is we are trying to transform urgent social justice needs. So obviously, I've been in prison for 15 years, started the Actors Gang Prison Project, and then Cheryl and I started Creative Acts. And we use the arts not to teach people how to be artists or for performances, but to give people tools to make different emotional choices, to disrupt the system, to build community and raise power, and center the voices of people who are or were incarcerated. And I am currently today in what we call Los Angeles, but is actually Tongva Native American land, unceded lands, and I will put in the chat a link so everybody can see which Native American land they are living on.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much, Sabra, and thank you for joining us today. Dr. Marcus, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your work at UCLA, and how are you doing today?
Thank you. I'll start with the last question because, it's always good to check in. I am, as Fred Hammond often says, I'm feeling blessed in the city, blessed when I come, blessed when I go. It's a blessing to be here with such a powerful group of people today and spread the word about truth, racial healing, and transformation. I am a professor of sociology and African American studies at UCLA. I'm also the inaugural chair of African American studies at UCLA and a Scott Wall Endowed Chair. Many people may know of me in part because I am the coordinator of hashtag Black Lives Matter. And I'm here today to really offer some information and some background on truth, racial healing, and transformation as the concept, and also now as the legislation that Congresswoman Barbara Lee and Senator Cory Booker are putting forward. Thank you for having me here, Sam and Michael.
Oh, thank you for joining. Greatly appreciate you. And would like to introduce Michael. Could you introduce yourself? How are you doing today? And tell us what's new in our work at ARC in the national policy realm.
Thank you, Sam. I'm doing good. As the Director of National Advocacy at ARC, we're really looking forward to not only advocating on behalf of THRT 100, but several other pieces of legislation that we're excited about. I'm also excited that as a member of ARC since 2013 to get our members really engaged through their storytelling efforts and their experience and expertise to really bring about truth, racial healing, and transformation. So I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Thank you so much, Michael. Greatly appreciate you for joining us, brother. Marcus, can you please give us context so that our viewers understand and know exactly what is House Congressional Resolution 100 and how has it come to be?
Yeah, no problem. First, shout out to you, Sam, for your wisdom and your vision and leadership, being one of the earlier groups to also come on board and endorse. And now we're at 236 organizations that have endorsed the TRHT movement. So I just want to shout out you and ARC for pioneering in that endorsement. So a little background, about 4 years ago, both Dr. Gail Christopher, who is the visionary behind the TRHT framework, Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, and myself were brought together by Congresswoman Barbara Lee in DC to have a meeting to see if we would be part of a team that would put together some legislation that would authorize a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Commission in the United States. And Dr. Gail Christopher is very important, not only for the framework, but also because she did a lot of the research that looks at truth reconciliation commissions, both in South Africa and other places, to see what were the lessons that happened. Of course, it would be ideal if in the United States we had already done a truth commission, but as it seems, 400 plus years later, we're still waiting on that commission. And so Dr. Christopher had the vision to really think about what would be the goals and the achievements that we could have in America if we learned the lessons of truth and reconciliation abroad and had it here. And so she came forward with Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. And they really represent 5 larger pillars that include the law, society, justice, and the sort, health, and things like that. But put more simply, it's really about having the truthful conversations, activating the racial healing that I think if anyone wasn't aware, we look at January 6th and the insurrection there as clear evidence that America is in deep need of racial healing. And then the transformation stands in for transformative policies that mitigate and prevent future harms and harms of this nature. The overall sentiment is about unseating the plant that has now become the tree of America. That is the notion of human hierarchy and the notion of a value system within that human hierarchy, whereby we imagine Black people as less human, Black families as less family-like, and it then authorizes and give permission to systems and persons to treat people like they're not equal, like they're not human. And part of what we're trying to do is get to the root of that, because any other thing is only going to delay. So part of what Congresswoman Barbara Lee put forward is a bold vision that gets us forward and helps us repair and restore from 400 plus years of racism and human hierarchy so that we can get into a more inclusive, just, and free society. And it's important to note that this is in collaboration and correspondence with the HR 40 bill put forward by former Rep. John Conyers, now being spearheaded by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, better known as the Commission to Study Reparations for African Americans. So these 2 bills were put together in collaboration to put forward, I consider to be a reparations plus model. And so as the author of a book called Radical Reparations, it's important for me that Black people and people of color, one, start to unlearn the mindset that we're taught on a steady diet of anti-Blackness, that when you hear the word Black or you hear the word reparations, you hear it as a constraint, you hear it as something that does not apply to you, you hear it as particular, as opposed to hearing it as expansive, necessary, and the benefit of all people.
Thank you for that, Marcus. Greatly appreciate that insight. So just so the audience is clear, these are commissions to study. And we're not saying anything has been decided, but we need to look at this. And so the ultimate goal of this movement, Sabra, could you first share your thoughts on the ultimate goal of this movement, and then we'll come back to Dr. Marcus?
Yes, I would say I speak as an immigrant and as a Black woman. And so I think I have a particular lens on this country that may be a little different, like people would have on my country, like the way Americans or other people could look at the UK. And what I've seen since I moved here is that there's an indoctrination in this country that starts from birth about this lie about American exceptionalism and, being number one, and that no other countries has the freedoms that America has. And then that's infused with a lack of education about world geography or world history until 10th grade in public schools, by which time we've already been fully indoctrinated. By a lack of travel. I think it's still less than 20% of Americans have passports. By a lack of access to world news, to the decent world news, which enables us to become very America-centric. And so when I came here and I started to learn, working in prisons, my whole education has been from people who've served time. And I started to understand what was behind mass incarceration, that it is completely yoked to, 400 years of a indigenous genocide and Black slavery in this country. And that has been covered by a very thin sheen of this, America the Great. And so really, since I came here, I was like, we really need to do what at that time I thought it was truth and reconciliation, like in South Africa or Rwanda have done. And I was fortunate enough to be a Bellagio resident in Italy in 2018. And I met one of South Africa. He was the former Chief Justice in South Africa, and he served time in Robben Island with Nelson Mandela. And he was part of making the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that they had there. And I asked him, why wasn't it as successful in South Africa as it could have been, or say maybe it was in Rwanda? And he said it's because we had, let's say, the poor farmer farming on barren land come and tell his story of the trauma that had happened to him or her and re-traumatize himself at that point, and then go back to the farm and nothing had changed. So he said, if you're going to do it in America, you must include reparations as part of this movement. So my position, my point on this is that I've learned over 15 years that an approach that centers the arts, when we use, theater, poetry, music, dance, to address difficult conversations or to transform trauma, it works in a very deep and very quick way. So I am part of this commission to, when we are able to pass these bills and have a truth commission in this country, to work on the process of that, the process of transformation using an artistic approach, because that's what I know, and I know that it works.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sabra. Dr. Hunter, could you tell us the core message, like if you could concisely tell us what the core message is for this movement for our viewers?
Yeah, one of the core messages has been put forward by hashtag Breathe With Me Revolution. And so I've been working with them as a transformation architect, and they put out two major PSAs. One in which you get to actually see Congresswoman Barbara Lee and a number of other activists. Shout out to Mark Lamont Hill and Brittany Packnett and David Johns from the NBJC. Shout out for the sweatshirt here. But they run you through the resolution. So I would encourage people to check out that PSA because you get to hear the words of that resolution and what it's actually asking for. A second PSA was put out on MLK Day that features Alicia Keys and Mary J. Blige, Summer Walker, and so on, where they're then also talking about 17 more ways you can be killed while being Black in America as another push to the truth and the Truth Commission. So one thing is to say, please do make use of those PSAs. Folks who are listening to us and folks who will listen to us, I would encourage you to go to Breathe With Me, figure out what they're about. Also, look at their materials. Thank you for sharing it up on the screen. But they have two major PSAs that really inform people in real time, each of them no longer than about 4 minutes, where you get to hear the resolution and you also get to hear the level of influence that is trying to push this conversation forward. The major, I think, message comes really out of a proverb I share whenever I get a chance to talk about this out of Ghana. And the proverb is, a lie can destroy 1,000 truths. And so part of why I use that is, one, because many of us who are Black, who are in America, originate from Ghana and Nigeria and other parts of West Africa. And that means that the wisdom has traveled with us, even if we don't know. And in that wisdom, what it's saying is that just one lie, like the welfare queen, or like, if you go to jail, you deserve to be there and you're a criminal forever. You can't change that. These are lies that then make it difficult to actually have truth. And we can't have the America that people imagine exists, let alone that they believe exists, unless we actually squarely found ourselves on the truth of the nation. And one of the major truths is that it is premised not only just on slavery and dispossession of native lands, but the reason why both of those actions were able to happen is because there was a lie that defamed the humanity of native people, indigenous people, and Black African people that led people to go, they are less than human. As we see in many laws and policies dealing with native people, they will often refer to them as savages, as a way to give permission to taking land that was unceded nor theirs to begin with. This is how they got permission to take Black people and their families, break them apart, split them apart, put them in one island here, places in South America there. Shout out to Brazil, where 99% of the slave trade actually went, but also then to the United States. So part of the idea here is that if we don't understand that defaming the humanity of Black people is at the very core and foundation of America, then we are not getting to the root of the problem. The reason why criminal justice can proceed in the injustice way that it goes is because this human hierarchy, the idea that we're all in some rank order of value, gives permission so that when you, as a regular person, are showing up in a courtroom, it gives permission to the judge and the court officers to see you as less than human. Therefore, I don't have to consider you as a reasonable actor, as a rational actor. Instead, you're somewhere beneath how we may act if you were civilized. So it's really to say that truth has to be at the foundation. And until we get to the truth, we won't even have the racial healing that we clearly need. And if we have the racial healing, we can get the transformative policies that we need to prevent this from going on any further, because too many scholars have written too many books that demonstrate even when slavery was formally ended, you then get chain gangs, you get Jim Crow, you get racial residential segregation, you get all of these other residual aftermaths that basically are slavery in another form, as they say, slavery in another name. And it's all because the truth of the situation is people went out from European countries in particular, and they strategically and intentionally defamed the humanity of Black African people, so that by the time they arrived in Virginia on an auction block, the white people who were there were preconditioned to see those people as not human beings. So I'm not actually watching a human being being sold. That's why I can watch it, because there's been a whole pattern of information and news and all sorts of things that has provided me a steady diet of anti-Blackness, of anti-humanness. So when I see this person, I think they're not human.
Dr. Hunter, could you mentioned the hashtag Breathe With Me revolution.
Yes. Yes.
Could you share with us, tell us a little bit more about that and why now?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So hashtag Breathe With Me was conceptualized and founded in partnership with Lee Blake, who's 30 years in the game in terms of social activism, especially around AIDS. She worked with Alicia Keys and founding Keep a Child Alive. So many people will know of that work there. And she did it in partnership with Damian Smith, and also most importantly with Prophet, who are music managers, Black music managers, who also then founded the Black Music Action Coalition. The idea here was to seize on this moment of awareness. So we were all being pandemicked and quarantined, and all of a sudden people had time. And then that time meant that people had 8 minutes and 42 seconds to watch George Floyd lose his life. And then ask yourself, why does that look like that could be me? Why is this allegedly happening in America? Why does it look like he isn't doing anything that warrants death? This is a problem. Oh my goodness, where have I been? So it was seizing on this moment of awareness and consciousness to then maximize it, to push it in a direction that helps us get the protest into policy. So hashtag Breathe With Me and Black Music Action Coalition have been really working with celebrities and artists and also activists to all get us to all center around this idea of pushing for a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Commission and other policy measures that effectuate truth, racial healing, and transformation. So that's the kind of origin point for the hashtag Breathe With Me revolution. And as I said, I would encourage people to go to the website, also make use of the materials there, because they do a great job of breaking down legislation and things that seem very complicated to people into very understandable and relatable material pieces that help you hear the resolution in word, but then also get to see the people who we listen to on our radios, the people whose CDs we buy, the people whose MP3s we download, that we get to see that they care about our truth, our racial healing, and our transformation. And that we can all join this by basically, one, supporting Congresswoman Barbara Lee's pioneering vision to actually make this happen, to support this Black woman leader who knows that America needs this. This is the same woman who knew we should not go into the Iraq war. So we need to support her vision. We need to also support the collaboration and partnership that she's created with Senator Cory Booker to really help this go forward. And I think for people who are wondering, well, what is the Truth Commission going to do in real time for my life? Is that one,
the Truth Commission. Dr. Hunter, you're on the point right now. And this is a question for you, Sabra, and Michael, because you just touched on the point that we really need to delve into. How can our community members and organizations get involved? What do they need to do? What do they need to know? What's the next step for them? So let's say we have 20 organizations that are watching this right now. They want to know, okay, I want to support this. 100 people watching right now. They want to know, okay, I want to support this. What do they need to do?
There are a couple of really straight up next steps. One of the first steps is definitely go and educate yourself using those PSAs, because I think one thing that happens is you got to speak it from your heart so that you can know that you're making the influence and the impact that you're looking for. So one, I think just educating yourself is a meaningful next step, because a lot of people are not aware, which is why I really appreciate the space that you, Sam, and Michael and ARC have put together today to bring the public consciousness and awareness up about what is available to you if you exercise your right to influence policy in a direction that is meaningful. The second thing is that when we were able to introduce it in June 4th, Congresswoman Barbara Lee introduced it officially. We were able by the end of the year to get up to 170 co-sponsors, which is amazing and unprecedented. But among all those co-sponsors, we were not able to effectively get Republican sponsorship. And one thing that many people can do is that everybody has some Republican representation, whether it be in your state, in your city, in your town, wherever you live, there is a Republican who represents you, who should be an endorser and co-sponsor of this legislation. Also, another thing is to contact your city council member, contact your local mayor. You don't have to wait on the United States to create a Truth Commission for you to have one in Los Angeles. You know, Mayor Garcetti is the first mayor of a major city to endorse the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Resolution. But we want to see that in every town, every city, rural, urban, and suburban. So no matter where you are, your condition is premised on the idea of human hierarchy and there being a value system therein. So educate yourself, contact your representative, especially a Republican representative, because there is no good reason why truth, racial healing, and transformation is a partisan issue. That is a need that is beneficial to every person who is in this country.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Dr. Hunter. Michael, how else can our people that are coming home that are now able to vote their own parole, and I think Dr. Hunter touched on it, how do we galvanize them and get them involved with supporting this, not just in California, but across the country?
Right. Great question. And I think to Dr. Marcus's point, get involved. There's another opportunity to sign up on the Truth and Racial Healing and Transformation Movement website. Another thing that was mentioned is that there are these commissions that are all over the country in different parts of the state. And one that is desperately needed, not just in Los Angeles, but in different parts of California as well, that would include people that are formerly incarcerated, because as mentioned, the most important thing about this is changing the narrative and showing people that even those who are formerly or currently incarcerated are not less than human. We are human beings that deserve to heal, along with transformational policies that will help us get there. But those are going to start through those important conversations that we all have to begin to talk about the values that will bring healing into our counties, into our communities, and most importantly, into our policies. So sign up, get on the website, see where your local Truth Commission is at to get involved.
Thank you, Michael. Sabra, how do we get more people involved?
Yes, so I think both Dr. Marcus and Michael have, crystallized a lot of what needs to be done. I definitely think, especially in California, with the ability now for people who are on parole to vote, make use of that, ARC members. You know, it's like you have power. Really, most of what politicians care about is being re-elected or elected. So you have power. You can actually pick up the phone and call your representative and say, listen, I really believe that we need this Truth Commission in America, and I can send you the information, and I really hope that you will support it and sign on. It's very easy to online, just Google who your representative is if you don't know, and let them know you're their constituent, you're a voter. And, you know, as Dr. Marcus was saying, it's extremely important to talk to people who are Republicans or right-leaning, because we only further the divide if this just becomes another partisan thing. We won't really make the deep cultural change that we need to in America. And particularly people who are systems impacted, you know, members of ARC, for instance. Prison is the end result of this lie that has been told and been compounded in America. So mass incarceration, people who are touched by mass incarceration, whether they're families, survivors, people who have been or are incarcerated, I really think that you all should be the center of this. You know, I hope that one day Breathe With Me will do a video, you know, with you guys giving your experience as well, because it's, as you know better than anybody, it's a very invisible population and most impacted by 400 years of white supremacy in this country. So I think it behoves us to really educate ourselves, and those videos are very easy ways to do it. Really make sure that we're active, because what happens is the results of not being active affect people who are systems impacted the most. So, you know, the question is how to have these conversations, how to make these changes, even if we get a Truth Commission, or when we get a Truth Commission, in a world where facts are not considered important in this country anymore. So we have to appeal to people in a different way. We have to appeal to them emotionally. We have to appeal to them through story. That is how we will bring this country together and have the unity that I hear people on the right and left really longing for. We have to connect on a human level. And that is how organizations like ARC, like the work we do at Creative Acts, that is how we have started to change the culture in terms of people understanding and changing the narrative around people who are systems impacted. It has come through story, through individual stories. That is how culture changes.
Thank you, Sabra. Dr. Hunter, I know we only have you for a few more minutes, but I would like for you two things. One, what is the current status of House Congressional Resolution 100? Mm-hmm. And your thoughts for the audience, because I want to be mindful of your time. I know you have a 12:30, 12:35 cutoff. Mm-hmm. So the status of the current Resolution 100 and last thoughts for the audience.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sam. This has just been a wonderful forum, and I cannot say thank you enough, just also to all of the people checking us out and getting education right now. So the first thing is the status, which is really important here, is that it is slated for reintroduction in later this month, somewhere around February 22nd. So the very first thing is, you know, putting on people's consciousness that this is something that will be put forward again, and you can encourage your representative, encourage your family members to be aware. I would say, you know, you want to send notes to people to say, get on board. I want you to endorse this. I want you to be a co-sponsor, an original co-sponsor of this when it gets introduced later in Black History Month. Especially, I think, meaningful that it's being reintroduced in Black History Month because it is Black people and Black women in particular who delivered the White House and now the Senate to the Democrats. So it is basically, I think, our time to ask for them to work for us, because your vote is really a vote for somebody to work a job on your behalf. And I think a lot of times we are so disempowered from our vote that we think, oh yeah, I voted, but it doesn't matter. It's like, no, your vote matters by and before and after you vote, because when that person is elected, they work for us. They are our representative. So if there's something that you need or that we need, the same way that you call a landlord up when the sink is broke, that's how you should feel about your representative. And many folks are relying on the fact that they don't have to hear from their constituents. So we want people reaching out, especially knowing that later this month is planned for reintroduction in the House and the Senate. The second thing is just a final thought, and I do this in my class. I'll give two of my own original kind of proverbs. One is that in a world where everything costs something, it is still free to change your mind. And I think the point that Michael made about narrative change, not only is that a key pillar of truth, racial healing, and transformation, but it is a need, a must in America. I mean, we really have to change this narrative that there are some of us who are valuable and there are others of us who are disposable. That is not a world that we need to be continuing to live in, especially after we've seen a pandemic kill so many people that could have been still here with us. The second thing is that quite literally, each of us need all of us. This idea that, you know, white people don't need black people don't need white people, black people don't need Latino people. We all need each other. And the thing that I would like for people to really get into is a steady diet where you start to hear the word black and think about how expansive and inclusive that term is of your own experience. When black people are experiencing disadvantage, whether it be through incarceration or through other mechanisms, they are experiencing something that represents the possibilities for all people who pass through those systems, not just what happens to black people. It represents what can happen to anyone in America if you find yourself in a system where you are disempowered and you are not valued at the same level as those who are also there. So I would encourage people to see truth, racial healing, and transformation as beginning to end the lie that some of us have value and others of us are disposable. I really appreciate the time y'all have given me today.
Thank you. We appreciate you joining us, Dr. Marcus Hunter. We look forward to continuing to work with you. ARC is endorsing Congressional Resolution 100. We are with it, and we want other organizations that are watching this, other people that are watching this, to please reach out. You can follow Dr. Marcus Hunter on Instagram. We put all of his contact information, including his Gmail, his email address. If you want to join, please reach out. We have to be active about this if we want to change things. Just as Dr. Hunter said, black women pretty much delivered the White House. It's time for us to ask the landlord, we got a plumbing problem. We need this fixed.
Yes,
we need it
that
fixed.
part.
Thank you again, brother. Greatly appreciate you. Take care and stay safe.
All right, y'all too. God bless y'all.
God bless. Sabra and Michael, in your work, you have found that this memorialization and remembering of past injustices as critical. Why is it critical to future healing to you? Sabra?
Yeah, I mean, you can't move forward in any way without the truth. So I can even I'm just thinking about one thing. I had to give my son the talk when he was 12 years old. All black parents know what the talk is. His best friend's mom didn't even know what the talk was. She's a white woman, and she didn't need to know what it was. And somewhere we've normalized that as black people, that yes, you know, oh, this is something that we have to do to save our children's lives so that they're not murdered on the street by police. We have to give the talk. And that somehow has become normalized. And I think that this is the issue, right? We have to shake up these things in us that we just accept because they've happened for 400 years. And one of the, this is an opportunity right now. So the door is slightly ajar right now because, you know, I actually think it started happening at 9/11 when Americans started to say, wait a minute, why do people hate us in the world, and started to self-reflect a little bit. Then we had the first black president, which, you know, was a massive victory, again, delivered mainly by black, you know, by black women again. And then inevitably we had a white supremacist president. And that happened because once you start shaking things up, people who benefit the most from the status quo hold on more tightly. And so if we are in a position right now where we have the door slightly open and it could close again very quickly, we have to take action at this moment. And one of the things is what people generally don't know or don't accept is that Black, Indigenous people of color are in the majority in prison because prison's invisible, so people don't see it. Right? So if we look at that, it's a fact, right? If we look at that as a fact, Black people are 4 times more likely to get the death penalty. It's a fact. Black people have to give their children the talk. That's a fact. If we just keep it there and we don't ask, why is that a fact? Where does that come from? Then we can just continue to just skate through and have like a pretend version of unity, right? But if we do this work where the first thing we do is ask, why? Why is that like that? Then we have to start to unravel and realize that why is linked to the beginnings of this country. And if we can have real history, real facts, real education from the beginning of our lives in this country, America will finally, after we go through this process, it will become what it says it is and has not yet been. And what it says it is beautiful, but we can't go there unless we're standing on the solid ground of truth. So there are lots of opportunities right now to find out about real truth. The 1619 Project is an opportunity to find out about how, what really happened here 400 years ago. If you follow organizations like Illuminative, for instance, you can find out what really happened in the beginning of America 2.0, as I call it. If you, connect with Breathe With Me, connect with this amazing bill and this amazing work that the Congresswoman Lee and Senator Booker are doing, you can actually, it's a way to really understand. And I think the problem is that we're also terrified of, like, if we go down that road and we learn the truth, it's going to everything's just going to explode. But it will be a difficult process, but we will finally have this beautiful thing that America says it is. We'll be able to do it. That's why we have to do it.
Thank you, Sabra. Michael, and based on both your lived experience, your work as on the national level, at the state level, why do you think it's important for people who have come in contact with the criminal justice system to really be involved with this and have a voice in this commission?
Sam, this resolution is critically important for people that have been impacted by the criminal legal system, simply because these commissions are going to bring people together to have really important conversations about the harmful narratives and the truth that we once believed in, especially during the mid-90s, truths that came up with theories that called young Black and brown kids, boys and girls, super predators. A lot of our ARC members, including myself, at a really young age, at the age of 15, when unfortunately I made a really bad decision in my life, was responded to by the state of California by locking me up in adult prisons with the 15 to life sentence, with really no hope to ever come home. And there were a lot of kids during the mid-90s that faced the same situation because we believed in this widely accepted theory that super predators were going to run the streets and really causes damage. And the truth is that data and research and science have then showed that that wasn't actually the case, that our kids and our children, that boys and girls, especially Black boys and girls, should not be treated as adults, but actually need care instead of cages. And so this commission will allow us to have these conversations, to point to those ugly lies that weren't the truth, and allow us to be able to share through our stories, through our lived experiences, that we are not just inmates, but we are human beings that are capable of change with the right resources that we need. And so this commission will hopefully be able to establish a lot of those truths that will lead to the healing, not only our community needs, but a lot of survivors and people who have been impacted indirectly by the criminal legal system. And so for many of those reasons, including a lot of the amazing ideas that formerly incarcerated individuals have about what they know works, is going to be the other important piece about this conversation, to come up with those solutions that will replace the bad policies that we know target Black and brown people, not just in the state of California, but throughout the entire country within our criminal legal system. So that is why, and some of the reasons why this is really important.
Thank you, Michael. I had an opportunity to read a book about 3 weeks ago. It comes out in audio too for those who don't like to read. It's called The Cast or Cast. And it literally does a comparison of America, German Nazi, or Nazi Germany, and India. And it also talks about modern day Germany. This is a book that I really think everyone should read at this point in time, because it breaks down, we're living in a caste system that's based on race. That was created. It also breaks down the science about race. When we really want to understand race, this was an incredible book. I'm starting to reread it again and take some really copious notes. But if you have time, please take the time to read this book. It also talks about how Germany basically has like monuments everywhere so that they never forget what happened with the Holocaust. Some are large monuments, some are small, but they're all remembrances of people whose lives were taken during that horrible, horrible period of time. And the way that Germany has navigated all of that is something that we can definitely learn from here in America. And when we think about Brian Stevenson's project, the monuments that he has for everyone that was lynched across this country and all of these counties, we've never addressed that. Those monuments for every county, including in California, one of those counties being Kern County, none of those counties have claimed those monuments for those people whose lives were stolen, that were murdered, just honestly murdered for no reason other than they were Black. And so I think it's really important that we start delving into this. And this commission, in my opinion, is the beginning of that. But we have to be informed. It's not pointing fingers or saying you're a bad person. This is our country, and if we're going to all live in it together, we need to be informed about it. We need to really be involved with making our country better. If not for us, how about the babies? How about our grandkids and our children? Sabra, how does race and racial injustice, particularly in Black America, factor into our work in fighting mass incarceration? And Michael, I'm gonna come to you with the same question.
Yeah, can I just follow up on what you just said, because I think it's
absolutely
important. I remember when I went to see Brian Stevenson and to see his museum, and he also has done, or his organization has done, in the streets, they've done markers. For instance, the street where his office is on is called Commerce Street. And they boast about how great commerce they had in Montgomery, Alabama. But what they didn't mention is the commerce were Black people, was slaves. So he has markers, on Commerce Street to explain, for instance, what's there. And then also, one of the things I noticed in the lynching memorial is that most of the places where lynchings happened, there are now prisons, including in Kern Valley. Kern Valley State Prison is is in a lynching site, and in Louisiana, Angola Prison is named for a slave plantation that was there at the time when it was made. So I think it's very important to understand that is why we have to know the truth about how this country started and who built this country, because the day that today's prisons or the outcomes still affect us every single minute of every day. So I want to say that. And I also wanted to say that I think it's very important what you just said. You said it quite quickly, but it's very important. This isn't about bad people and good people. This isn't, white people are terrible and need to feel shame. That is not what any truth commission is about. It's about telling the factual truths of what happened, who benefits from the current state of affairs, and who is most impacted by the current state of affairs. So it's not, everybody who looks like this is terrible and everyone who looks like this is good, but we have to know the reality of what happened. And then we have to have tools to enable people to face it and transform it. And that's, at Creative Acts, we do anti-racism training. And that's why we use the arts, because it's incidental learning. So you're playing and you don't know that while you're playing, you're actually starting to have, change your narratives and starting to have an understanding of truth. So I guess I just wanted to say that. And then, in answer to your question, I feel like I already kind of answered it, is that, in the dismantling of people's agency when they are incarcerated is one of the main psychological tools that is used to break people. So that's one of the things I notice the most, is that when people go to prison and then they spend 30 years in prison and they come back and they've never had to make a choice, because for 30 years they've been told what to eat, when to eat, what to do, what to wear. So they have no agency over people's lives. And that's something that when we're inside prison, that's our little disruption of the system, that we try to train people how to have agency over their lives again, how to make choice, how to regain their power. And, that is why people who are most impacted really, really need to pick up their agency when they come home, when they're on the outs, and use it to help make change. Call your representative. I can promise you, I work a lot with politicians. They always tell me the most effective way to reach us is calls. Because if you call, we have to log every call. We know how many people have called us. That's how you make change. So, it's a matter of regaining agency and understanding power to be like, I called this politician, and I may have been one of thousands, but nevertheless, this politician took action after they had, after I'd spoken to them. So I guess it's, I want to say that it's why it's so crucial for people who are systems impacted.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sabra. Michael, how does I'm going to switch a little bit. How does House Resolution 100 fit within a larger context of ARC's work?
Yeah, and I'll include part of my answer from the last question into this one, because I think there's some facts and statistics that our audience should hear when it comes to race and racial justice or injustices, not just being a part of our work, but a part of what we are talking about. I mean, during the height of tough on crime in the mid-90s, we saw from 1985 to 2006, the prison population more than tripled, from 50,000 to 173,000. And that's just in the state of California. The Sentencing Project recently came out saying that 1 in every 10 Black men in his 30s are in prison or jail at any given day. And then also these enhancements that we are so many people are plagued with within the criminal justice system are ones that specifically appeared as a response during these mid-1990s scare against the so-called super predator. And so we see that a lot of these policies mostly disparately impact Black and brown folks. And that's something that is always going to be addressed within our work, at least with ARC. Sam, you always talk about how within the last 7 years, we've passed over 26, 27 bills in partnerships with many great advocates in California to specifically address these racial disparities through policies and laws that we have changed that now, give people a more equitable chance when they appear before the board for their freedom, or while they're waiting for court, haven't even been found guilty, but yet languish in jail. And so a lot of what we try to address within our work is to not just address the inequalities within our criminal legal system, but to really continue to change the narrative and how our folks are treated. And within the larger context of ARC's work, one of the expected outcomes that we see of this commission, out of the 4 expected ones, is to develop and implement transformational policies and remedies to specifically dismantle this system of mass incarceration. And we've come a long way in California through our work to really develop game-breaking policies that have set standards and precedences, not just within our courts, but across the country for other states to look at. And for ARC, as we move forward, we want to make sure that we keep continuing to not just undo the racial harms and the policies of the mid-90s, but replace those laws with laws that are more humane and treat people with care, not cages.
Thank you so much, Michael. Greatly appreciate you. Sabra, last thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'm always so excited and encouraged by the work ARC is doing. You guys have like deeply changed narratives and cultures and legislation across this state, and have had a massive effect on people already. I guess what I would say is that we at Creative Acts, we have a program called Art Attacks, where we work with March for Our Lives, a youth anti-gun violence organization, and we go inside juvenile youth prisons to raise power and awareness with our young people who are incarcerated, and as civic engagement. And actually in the presidential election, 100% of them voted in the last election. And there's an issue of inside prison and in the community of a lack of resources and education, and it's intentional. People intentionally want to keep people of color, particularly Black people, silenced and ignorant as to the truth of their power and reality. So that's one thing. We need more programs, and they need to be funded, so that people are not spending, by people I mean people like me, are not spending 90% of the time trying to raise money instead of spending the time inside doing the work. And then the other thing I would say is there is a difference between equity and equality. And what you hear a lot, this push to just move on, and this push for some imagined unity, or that it's, distracting or damaging to talk about the truth that is the reality of this country, that everybody is equal, everybody bleeds red, that stuff is a way to continue the lies of what has happened so far in the last 400 years. Equity is different, because equity includes an acknowledgement of what's happened in the past, the reality of where we are today, and the tools for what we need in order to be able to move forward. So we're not fighting for equality. A Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Commission is about equity, establishing the reality of where we've come from, the reality of where we are, and the vision of what we want to be, and the tools of how to get there. And that's going to include all of us, Black, white, brown, incarcerated, formerly incarcerated, young people, old people, elders, as they should be called. That's the only way that we're going to do it. So find out more, go look at those videos, and if we can answer any questions, whatever you need, we're happy to do so. And I think it's a matter of continued partnership with people like ARC, who are just doing extraordinary work, which is why I wanted you on this commission. So thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
No, thank you, Sabra, and thank you for reaching out to us to get us on this commission. I greatly appreciate you and the amazing work that Creative Acts is doing. So follow, we put your information on. If people look at this afterwards, we will make sure that we can put you in contact with Sabra. This is one of our amazing partners doing this work to end mass incarceration, just make our system and our communities safer, better, and more just together. There's a saying, it takes an entire village to raise a child. So you're looking at part of that village, just a small part of that village. Is way more.
Sam, that's what I want to say. People think this is such a terrible process and everyone's just going to be really miserable, and it's not. There's so much joy where the truth exists. Joy,
Absolutely.
Joyful.
Michael, last thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, I think my last thoughts revolve around a lot of the tough conversations we're seeing nationally, within different states and even locally. We've witnessed a historical transfer of power and a lot of hard conversations to see what next steps are on a national level. On the state level, we continue to fight for the changes that we have implemented around criminal justice reform, and even have to defend. And even on the local level, as we see this newly elected district attorney, George Gascon, implement positions that a lot of people in California have fought hard to see. And there are a lot of attacks going on all angles. And I think this is a moment where something like truth, racial healing, and transformation is going to be really critically important to help us talk about why changing the narrative is important. And that's going to come through our stories, through our lived experiences, to share and show, why people do deserve a second chance. And so I think for me, I'm just excited to see how many people that are impacted and indirectly impacted step up and really make a strong stance here to start a new beginning and not allow us to go back to the normal that we were all traumatized by prior to that pandemic, but to really begin something new and transformational moving forward.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Sabra. Thank you for joining us. As always, you're amazing. Next week, we will be talking about mass incarceration in Los Angeles and how do we get here. And for those of you that don't know, in California, 1/3 of the entire prison population comes from LA County. So that's going to be our discussion next week. We look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next week. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.